He's never fought us. Not us united.
Die. Oh! I can so see that. That's it. Welcome to Comics League. I'm Jared, and today we are discussing one of the coolest DC events that I think they have done. It's up there. We're talking about Blackest Night. Now, for context, this was like the big culminating event of the Geoff Johns Green Lantern run. And it was the idea that, okay, so you know how there's the emotional spectrum. Well, in the Green Lantern run, they established the emotional spectrum. And there was a prophecy in the Book of Oa, the sort of guidebook for the Green Lantern Corp. There, in the book, it said there was this prophecy of Blackest Night, and it included, like, the dead shall rise. There will be a war of light, and then the dead shall rise. So, and that's it in a nutshell. And I remember this is also what the creed of the Green Lantern Corps is talking about when it says in brightest day and blackest night. So what happens is you have this being called Nekron. He's essentially like Parallax is the emblem, is the personification of fear. He's the personification of death. And his avatar is this DC character named William Hand, who's like very much enamored with the idea of death. Now, in the timeline, this is following Final Crisis. And that's important because Batman is dead in this universe. Bruce Wayne Batman is dead. Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne are the Batman and Robin right now. That's important for what happens later. What happens is these Black Lantern rings start coming down to Earth. And what they do is they go onto corpses and reanimate them and turn them into zombies. This was essentially DCeased before DCeased, where you have like Superboy Prime, Superman, Wonder Woman. It gets to the point where it's characters that have died in the past are now susceptible to the Black Lantern rings. In other words, you don't have to be dead right now. If you have died and come back, you are 100% susceptible, because the justification that Nekron gives is because I opened the door and you stepped through it. So I opened the door to death, so you're there. So that's how like Superman, Wonder Woman, and almost Flash and Green Lantern get infected with the Black Lantern rings. You also have, which is one of the coolest moments ever. Okay, so the zombies are like taking over. It's getting intense. The Corps, and by Corps, I mean the United Sinestro, Red Lantern, Pink Lanterns, Yellow Lanterns, all the lanterns unite and say, okay, enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's just put aside our differences temporarily and just say, let's work together. So it's too much even for that, because you're dealing with like Justice League members that have Black Lantern rings. So what Ganthet, one of the Guardians of the Universes, does, and again, the Guardians are the beings that basically run the Green Lantern Corp. What he does is he basically says, okay, so I created the Green Lantern rings, right? And all of your other rings, and he's talking to the other cores, are based on Owen technology, so I can control them. I am going to give them the ability to deputize certain individuals to make them members of our corps. We can get some reinforcements. This is where you get that badass image, and I'll put it up here on the screen, of like Wonder Woman as a yellow lantern, Flash as a blue. Wonder Woman is not a yellow lantern. Wonder Woman becomes a Star Sapphire, which is the one of love. Scarecrow becomes a yellow lantern. Lex Luthor becomes an orange lantern, and so on and so on. And eventually, that's enough to push beyond that seems to be enough to defeat Nekron. But again, he's so strong. So what do? All right, so there's this other being that Nekron's trying to destroy. It's the being of, it's the white light of life. And so Sinestro becomes the first White Lantern, but I believe the power rejects him. So what Hal says is, all right, yes, you opened the door, Nekron, for us to escape death. but we made that choice. We chose life. So if anyone is worthy of becoming a White Lantern, it's all of us. And then every member of the Justice League, every DC character that has died becomes a White Lantern. And what they end up doing, Necron is stuck in this world, is tethered to this reality through William Hand, who right now is dead. He's essentially the first Black Lantern zombie. So what they do, they bring William Hand back to life, and what this does is it severs Necron's connection to our world. And in addition to that, who else should be the battery of the Black Lanterns but the Anti-Monitor from Crisis on Infinite Earths? At this point, they raise the Anti-Monitor back to life, so there's no more power for the Black Lanterns. Everyone's back to life. Everyone's fine. Then the White Lanterns bring back a select few heroes and villains that have been dead for like a long time, like Hawk and Dove. I believe it's a Boston Brand Deadman. You also have Aquaman. So many. In other words, this was DC choosing, going through their catalog of dead characters and going, who do we bring back on a permanent basis? And then there you go. So that's, in a nutshell, Blackest Night. Now, the overall story is amazing. It's super cool. Like, that's where we get Black Lantern Batman. He emerges, and he's like more zombie-like than the other Black Lanterns. This is because, all right, so at the end of Final Crisis, Batman is killed by Darkseid. Killed, air quotes. What we discover is Batman was actually cloned by Darkseid. And you may be wondering, why is this? Because Darkseid apparently intentionally sent Batman back in time, because eventually through his journey, it would lead to the end of the multiverse, or like it would lead to great power being conferred on the Darkseid. The point is, he sends Batman back in time. So the Justice League wouldn't go looking for him. He clones Batman, and then the body that you see in that iconic image from Final Crisis of Superman holding Batman's corpse, that's the clone. And that's the body that they buried. And furthermore, that is the body that is resurrected when Batman becomes a Black Lantern. And this is suspicious, because after the Black Lanterns go away, it's like the body just crumbles and doesn't like come back to life in any way. So all the heroes are like, well, wait a second. How come it worked for those people, but not for this? I don't think this was Bruce. And this leads to the Return of Bruce Wayne storyline that I have recently read and debating covering. And so once again, that's like the in a nutshell what Blackest Night is. Now, what I do want to talk about, there is a couple of tie-ins in this that are of note that I think are amazing. All right. So I have to briefly discuss Superboy Prime real quick to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. So Superboy Prime comes from our world. In other words, he comes from the regular world where superheroes were in comic books. And why is this important? Because the tie-in for him for Adventure Comics for Blackest Night is he is in his comic book room reading the very same comic that features him in this event. So he's essentially reading himself, and he goes, do they have to make me the bad guy? It's so meta and weird, but it's so funny because he goes to like a comic book shop because he has to know what happens next in his story. But what's funny about it is, so he has to go on the internet to look up spoilers. Then he finds out where DC offices are, or were back then. This is back when DC was in New York. So he goes to New York City and during a battle with Alexander Luthor of Earth 3, who was also killed at the end of Infinite Crisis, but that's not relevant for discussion. He goes to DC's offices and goes, you ruined my life. Everything that's bad has happened to me is because of you people. And he's wrecking the office, and he wants to destroy everything because, remember, he's like a self-aware superhero. Well, superhero is a very generous term. Essentially, he he blames DC for what happened to like his family, to like all the superheroes. Like, you guys turned us all dark and edgy and everything, so you're gonna pay for that. And that leads to, but eventually he's teleported out and all that. But that's like the first like Blackest Night tie-in that I think is really, really, really important. The next one that I personally enjoyed was the one where there's one where, okay, so Superboy has died in Infinite Crisis. He's fighting Cassie Sandsmark. So eventually he comes back and brings people back to life. So let's bring in JJheat. JJheat, what's up? I'm just talking about Blackest Night.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing very well. We're talking about Blackest Night, the DC's first zombie event. So real quick, what's like your thoughts on Blackest Night?
Blackest Night is one of those storylines where everything just comes together. It's basically the closest DC has ever gotten to Star Wars. That's literally the best I could describe it as.
That's basically the entire Geoff Johns run, because really, and I agree with it, because remember, they were teasing Blackest Night since the beginning of the Geoff Johns run with like the prophecy of Blackest Night. So to see everything come together, so I love it when a plan comes together. So there you go. But I was just talking about the really weird tie-in for this issue where Superboy Prime goes to the DC offices and wrecks everything because he's like, "You ruined my life."
And that's the thing. He's essentially an allegory for toxic nostalgia, but really, he's just a 16-year-old kid who lost his world of reality. He's literally just a teenager who got dealt a bad hand. He has every right to be pissed.
No, I know, but it's just so. That's one of the things I love about Superboy Prime is his stories are always like the most meta thing in the world because he reads comic books, and that it's really weird. But one of my favorite. So I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite like scene from Blackest Night? Because mine is when everyone gets lantern rings, and you see like Lex Luthor becoming an Orange Lantern. My one critique is Superman did not get a blue lantern.
Such a missed opportunity.
But anyway, so what's your favorite moment from Blackest Night?
The emergence of the white light entity. That has to be.
Yeah, and where everyone becomes white lanterns because they chose life. That was awesome. And again, this story is like, if you want to, this is why I always tell people, if you wanted to see a solid comic book run that I think doesn't really have a bad issue, it's the Geoff Johns run, because even Geoff Johns is the expert, I think, of tease. He's like the Jonathan Hickman of DC in that he teases stuff throughout his run of comics, and then it pays off really well.
When it comes together, it really comes together.
Yeah,
I can't get away from it.
Yeah, it's like in his Justice League run, the New 52, when Darkseid first showed up, Wonder Woman asked him, "Why are you here?" And he goes, "I'm here for her." You find out later, at the end of the run, that it was just all setting up Darkseid War and the emergence of Grail, the daughter of Darkseid.
And speaking of war, if you've seen our recent New Direction episodes, or at least the two we did this weekend, we had a little little war of our own.
All right, so what I need to get is that drop from SpongeBob of Patrick going, "Everybody dies." The end. Well, we don't kill everyone, but they get pretty close. But back to Blackest Night. The thing about this, the thing that I always felt was like really cool. In addition to this, it is really cool to also see the Anti-Monitor become the power battery of the Black Lanterns. Like, so much stuff, like from DC lore going back to Crisis, is brought into this.
But you got to remember, there were a shitload of tie-ins in this.
Oh yeah, so many, and so many really funny ones too, like the Superboy Prime, the one where Donna Troy meets her her like child baby, because remember her kid I think died at some point with her husband
in a car accident. I think it was 1983, 1984.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see all this. It's a big moment for Donna's history, and it's just kind of weird seeing her get bitten in the neck by a zombie baby and then her slowly turn. I also like the one with Batman and Robin where Dick Grayson has to fight his parents.
That was also a good one. And then Dead Man takes over Damian's body, and that was a good laugh.
Dead Man taking over anyone's body is always so funny. It's funny because when they did it in Justice League and even in Camu, that everyone just gained a Boston accent. I just love that. That was so cool. But what other tie-ins do you think are like? Do you enjoy of Blackest Night? Because I would say my favorite is the Superboy Prime because of how self-referential it is. Oh, and JHeat, if you're talking, you have muted yourself.
I'm back. I just had to step out for a second.
Okay, so what's your favorite? What are some of your other favorite tie-ins? Because there is one that I can't stand because it's the image that always gets thrown out with the Wonder Bat thing of Wonder Woman getting the Star Sapphire and then seeing Bruce and making out with him, and I'm like, okay.
What about?
Oh no, we've lost connection to JJheat. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna get you, dude. But the problem with that is that I don't know why I went to Army of the Dead. The problem with that is that that's like a moment that comes out of nowhere because at no point, even during post-crisis, is it hinted that Diana and Bruce have a thing, and it's like that's just Greg Rucka being like essentially like going for his own thing instead of what's actually in the books.
Well, you have to understand this is around the time where the original run of the DCAU ended, so it's more of a flash of fan service than anything.
Yeah, even though it didn't even do anything in that fan service because Batman rejected her, but that's besides the point. But I also love that my other favorite moment in Blackest Night, I have to say this, is when all the cores charge up like Atrocitus, Carol Ferris, Hal, they all charge their rings at the same time, and it's like a double page splash of all of their Lantern oaths, and then Larfleeze is just mine. I love that.
Pure greed.
Yeah, that was a funny tie. So this is unrelated to Blackest Night, but I feel like I have to say this. This is like one of one of my favorite. Like, I think it's a tie-in for Brightest Day, but Larfleeze apparently wants to find Santa Claus because Santa gives gifts. And actually, in the DC comic, it gives you instructions on if you want to cut something out of your comic book, which I don't know if anyone ever did that. You can make a Larfleeze Christmas ornament. Which I'm like, why would anyone cut that? That was always the weirdest thing when they put like, you can cut this out of your books. Who's gonna do that?
It was just a cheap promo that only lasted like a couple of weeks. I don't even think hardly anyone did it, at least to my knowledge.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because you destroy the value of your very expensive comic books. Yeah, so what was another tie-in that you really because obviously I think that wait, I got a better idea. What was your favorite death in Blackest Night? In other words, and by death I mean conversion into Black Lanterns.
I don't really have a particular favorite because they all go from zany to in character to very disturbing in context. You gotta understand, this was like 2 years after Identity Crisis with
And
Sue Dibney, and it's just like, no, this is in poor taste even for you. Come on.
Yeah, the one that I felt was actually really cool is when Black Lantern Adam infects the Hawks by going through the internet and like biting them. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good Skynet reference.
And then I liked when Hawkgirl comes back to life at the end of the story. She remembers her entire life with Carter. So I'm like, oh, that's a nice touch. That's a really nice touch. Was that Shayera, Hawkgirl, or Kendra? I can't remember.
Kendra starts New 52 onward. Shayera is from the Silver Age. Then she gets rebooted post-Crisis for the Bronze Age. And then Synergy for the DCAU. So Kendra being the main Hawkgirl is relatively recent.
Okay, I didn't know it was that recent.
Within the past 10 to 15 years.
It probably is because the Arrowverse, because remember, it was Kendra in the Legends of Tomorrow show.
Yep.
which again, this is another occasion where it's a needless change just to line up, and it just doesn't work. I wonder if anyone's done a study of if that synergy thing actually led to an increase in comic books.
It can. It just depends on how it's executed. Like for New 52 Green Arrow, it was not that bad. All you had to do was actually pair Dinah and Green Arrow in the run, and it would have done a lot better.
Well, also pair them in the show too, because let's not forget about that.
Yeah, they kind of did that with the Lances, but they try. Okay, Arrow is just CW's version of Batman. Let's just
That's
call
what
it
it is. That's because if you think that Green Arrow is a brooding character, no,
he's not. He could be a jackass, but never brooding.
It's to the point where it was jarring when I watched. Let's see. When I watched Arrow and then played Injustice, because even in that one, he's super like light and jovial. I'm like, this doesn't line up.
Yeah, the Bat embargo was a.
But I mean, yeah, I got the Bat embargo was a problem, but then they shouldn't have tried to make a Batman. You could have made a Green Arrow show that's really solid.
Or just add Batman. Okay, first of all, this was around the time. The only project that were really out at the time was Gotham. All it was Gotham, which was a prequel series that didn't even have Batman.
Until like the last shot of the show.
All you had to do is come to a licensing deal with Fox, and then just have Batman appear in a Nick Fury or pseudo mentor capacity, like an elderly hero or an older hero.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, CW and Fox worked directly with WB before Disney bought them out. It wouldn't have been that hard to do. You just had to pay the licensing fee and give Fox a cut.
True. But you know how lazy these studios are. But again, so one of the things I want to talk about for Blackest Night is I have a theory that this is going to be like the 10-year plan for the DCU, for the movies. Because, again, they have 10 years to set this up well. And apparently, Gunn has said that the Green Lantern series is going to be when he gives us any like indication of what the big threat is. So I'm like, okay, if it's Green Lanterns and they have 10 years to properly build up to it, hey, Blackest Night, baby.
But we're not really getting a Green Lantern movie, at least in the first phase. In the first phase or first chapter, Green Lantern is mostly going to be tie-in material or TV shows.
Well, it's going to be a TV show, but I'm saying in the TV show, they could at least hint that there's like this being called Necron and all that stuff. And then they'll start to like lay the foundations. And then maybe later we can like see like the other rings show up. And then you can have like the War of Light for like a Green Lantern movie. And then you can like go through all this. What I'm wondering is, because they did say that other superheroes are going to exist during the time of Superman. So what I'm wondering is, like, obviously, I mean, I don't think they could do Green Lantern Rebirth because they can't kill Hal Jordan because that's dependent upon the death of Superman.
Well, it's adjacent to it because around the same time, Hal lost his mind and became Parallax.
But the Parallax thing was an indirect result of the death of Superman, so they still have to do that to the comics
to an extent.
I mean, they could do it the way they did it in Tomorrowverse, where Hal was just they just did that for Parallax, where he's infected with the entity. Then you can like break out of it, obviously, and you get it, but. Look this way: if Hal Jordan is going to be the main, one of the leads in the Green Lantern series, I don't think they could do Emerald Twilight.
Yeah, I get what you mean. That's one of my biggest nitpicks. Like killing, I get you wanted to do Parallax, but killing Hal off like that was a little forced to me. I get you wanted to prop up Jon Stewart, but I just don't. Kyle. Yes, he did. They did pretty much rip off Kyle Rayner's origin, but I just don't think they should have killed off Hal. At least
they shouldn't have
in the first film.
Because in the first film, no, they should not. That was a stupid decision.
At least in the first film, because he had no control of his actions. He was mind controlled the entire time.
Yeah, you could have given him a nice redemption arc, but no. Exactly. Well, that's the one critique of that movie where I'm like, yeah, you have a point there, because I'm like, because it's like, yeah, you do Emerald Twilight, but you don't give him an out at all. Well, they do, but they kill him before he could take advantage of that out. But they'll find some way to bring him back to life. This is DC we're talking about.
Yeah, that might make him a new vessel for the Spectre or something like that.
Yeah, I know, but I just think, I mean, exactly. That was the issue with that movie. But I mean, we'll see what happens. But in terms of like the back to the Blackest Night comic, I think that let me ask you this: where does this rank in like comparison to like Sinestro Corps War and Green Lantern Rebirth?
It's the culmination of everything in the Geoff Johns run.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Geoff Johns. He's very nostalgic for the late Silver, early Bronze Age. So say what you will about Geoff Johns, but by the time you get to Blackest Night, 5 omnibuses in, it's worth it.
Actually, actually 2, because the final omnibus is Brightest Day, and then the new 52 run he did.
Okay.
This was when they tried to cram in the new, like all the stuff, including Blackest Night, happening in 5 years. So I'm like, okay, beyond the whole you can't like cram that much history into 5 years. Many heroes that were significant to to that event for the Blackest Night don't exist in the new 52,
or at least haven't been established yet.
Yeah, at least haven't been established, and they want us to believe that like Wonder Woman became a Yellow Lantern, but the Justice League, there's no Hall of Justice in this universe yet, and you're expecting me to believe that Wonder Woman became a Star Sapphire in this universe? What?
Well, at least we did it better. #higher.
We did it way better. We may have to do a Green Lantern themed episode of New Direction at some point.
Definitely, because outside of trying to tie it back to Blackest Night, the new 52 Green Lantern was pretty decent for the most part.
Oh, yeah. Particularly when they also brought in Cruz, because I think she really opened up like, okay, these are, and Baz, because I think what those two did, they pushed back on the new Green Lantern characters are always the rep off of Hal Jordan or like any of the other ones. They were so different from the others.
John was militaristic and angry. Gardner was a blowhard. Kyle Rayner was a Hal clone, just an artist instead of a pilot. Simon Bass was seeking redemption. Jessica Cruz has PTSD from a near-death experience. Wait, was it a near-death experience or was it just crippling anxiety?
It was because when she was camping with some friends, they watched some mob people bury a body. It was like wrong place, wrong time, and her friends were shot in front of her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one part of that Justice League versus the Fatal Five did really well, is showing Jessica's origin. But that's why she specifically is one of my favorite Green Lantern characters, because they took this idea you're supposed to overcome fear, but she said, how am I supposed to overcome fear if I'm too afraid to leave my house? And I'm like, you just created a compelling narrative. And that at some level she was created for diversity reasons, even Baz, but they did it in a way that is like, but it
was organic.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You have to find a way to make it organic. Otherwise, it's just going to come off as half-assed.
Yeah, because remember, I don't think because Baz and her reached like near like total adoption by the DC fan base, and I'm like, that's why, because you don't make Simon Baz being a Muslim and Jessica Cruz being a Latina all that their character are. That can play into it, particularly in Baz's case, because there's a lot of posting that 9/11 stuff that plays into his story. But that makes sense, and it leads into why he becomes a Green Lantern and what he's trying to do. In other words, it's a component of the story, not the story itself.
I agree.
And that's the issue. But I think that's a good place to leave this discussion of Blackest Night. I normally keep these shorter videos short, but like JJheat mentioned, if you guys want to see us murder the Justice League, watch our most recent episode of of a new direction. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Beyond that, JHeat, where can we find you and what have you got coming out on the channel?
You can find me at JHeat Blaze on YouTube, JJheat75 on Twitter. I actually have the Tom King's alleged Tim Drake Nightwing pitch coming up on a live stream in the next couple of days. I also going to discuss both July and August 2023 solicitations because, just make it a chill stream and just talk about it. And of course, you already brought up New Direction. God, I don't even think it's a crazy one. Okay.
It's one where JHeat turned to me and he goes, "Can we do this?" And I'm like, probably not. But hey, we run DC in this scenario, so we can do whatever the hell we want.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. Thor, mythologically accurate Thor versus the Justice League.
Yeah, and by the way, you can't tell me this event would not sell out.
Oh, this would sell gangbuster. I'm talking every bit, almost 90,000 in sales.
Yeah, if you see like Thor versus the Justice League, people will probably ignore that's not MCU Thor, but they'll just go for it because, hey, it's that guy from the movies versus the Justice League, and he kind of wipes the floor with them. Because Thor is a beast in mythology.
Oh, he's a freaking savage.
Oh, jeez. But
then you got Black Adam in there. Oh, God.
Yeah, it's... So basically what we did is they're fighting in a giant crater that's created by this fight. That's how intense it gets. But as of for me, Nick and I have an indie comics discussion that we're going to do on Wednesday. We're going to be Justice League this week is going to be, it's by this week, meaning tomorrow, we'll be live. We're still establishing a time that we're going to do it, but it's going to be a live discussion of the last 3 episodes of Justice League. JHeat, if you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome to.
Send me the link.
And in terms of Under Two Capes, we're going to be talking about Amalgam Comics this week. So that fun time to pop your dark claws. I tried to do that. And on Saturday, not only will we be talking about Tron Legacy, but on Nick's channel, I will be a guest as he plays on the new Resident Evil game, and I heckle him as he plays it. And if you guys want to hear some colorful commentary, come to that one.
Sounds like a good time.
I am fantastic. I am a fantastic heckler. And on that note, everyone, stay heroic, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.